I do love Singapore, and I think living here is a blessing. I always think, every morning I wake up and I think one of my biggest blessings is living in Singapore.
Meet Sally Forrest. After 18 years in senior management positions in the UK, she moved to Thailand and shortly after to Singapore, where she has lived for almost 20 years. We discussed why Sally has never applied for citizenship, the difficulties of settling down in Asia, and why Feng Shui is so big in Singapore. I'm Max, an entrepreneur and YouTuber. Let's get started.
Have you ever thought of giving up your British citizenship, or you don't need to?
I have thought about it. I was actually commissioned in the British Army when I was younger. And so you swear an allegiance to your queen, yeah? There's always this feeling of, I can't let my queen down, right?
Yeah.
Plus my father he's a policeman and he was very proud to be British. So I thought if I give up my British citizenship, then I think I'd break too many hearts. But now the queen's passed over, right? And my father passed away recently. The two people that I had this massive loyalty to, my dad was 91 and of course the Queen was like 94. So now I'm thinking about the idea. I do see Singapore as home. I really do. My whole life is here. I do love Singapore, and I think living here is a blessing. I always think, every morning I wake up and I think one of my biggest blessings is living in Singapore. Singapore could have such a big impact coaching so many countries on how to be efficient. And whenever I go abroad, in fact, my husband will smile because I always say this. Whenever I see something not working, I'll always say to him, this wouldn't happen in Singapore, this wouldn't happen in Singapore. And he's like, you're not in Singapore anymore, Sally, you're on holiday, just relax. But, we'll go to an airport and it will be, really disorganized, and I'll be thinking, this wouldn't happen in Singapore, this wouldn't happen in Singapore. It's so organized, so efficient. Everything runs perfectly in Singapore. It's just amazing. And I'm quite an organized person, so I just love it. I step foot in Changi Airport and I just think, this is amazing. Everything runs perfectly. And they're so courteous. Everything is courteous, the way everything runs efficiently and courteously and respectfully.
Do you remember your first impressions being in Asia after the UK?
I was still a business person, right, at the time. So I was used to everything working efficiently. And then I got to Thailand. Yes doesn't mean yes. Right? So I had a secretary, I remember this, and we were doing some renovation in the shop, and I said, can you bring me the folder, the renovation folder? And she looked at me and she didn't know what I really meant. So she went off and she came back like half an hour later with a brand new folder with a sticker on it saying renovation. So when I opened it, there was nothing inside. I asked for the renovation folder. She said, yeah. It was just it was very difficult understanding the language. That was the hardest part. So you'd ask for something, people would not say, I don't understand. They'd go away and try and work it out and come back with something totally different. So there was a breakdown on, first of all, we should, I suppose, communicate much slower and in a way that people could understand. But also there was a breakdown. People didn't like to say, I don't understand.
In Asia, this is the thing, you don't want to lose your face. This is the thing in Japan, let's say, and in many Asian cultures. Do you feel like in Singapore it's kind of similar or no?
No, I find particularly the people that I work with in Singapore, they're absolutely on the button, they deliver. I've had no issues, which is one of the reasons I love it here so much. The people are great, and English is great here, yeah?
Yeah, English language, I mean.
Yeah, I haven't had many challenges here, whereas in Thailand, it was one challenge after another. In fact, I came to Singapore on a holiday for a weekend, and I remember I stayed at the Fullerton Hotel, and I was walking along by the river, and I remember thinking to myself, of all the places I could settle, it would be here in Singapore. So it was almost like you make a statement and then a few years later it sort of all came together.
Can you make a comparison between Bangkok and Singapore? 3 biggest differences, let's say.
In Bangkok, anything goes, right? It's just crazy, right? Anything goes, day or night, Bangkok. You can buy anything on the street, anything goes. So that's a big difference. So Singapore's a lot more regulated, and I quite like that. As you get older, you don't want to be walking out of the street at 2 a.m, bars are full of people, very rowdy. So that's a big difference for me. And the pollution. Bangkok was very polluted, whereas Singapore isn't polluted. But there's sort of a wildness to Bangkok that, a lot of people like. The markets, the Chatuchak market. I think Singapore misses a little bit of the wild side because everything is nice and organized. So it's, you can't have it both ways, I guess.
Did you have any cultural shocks that something memorable for you in Asia or in Singapore particularly?
The biggest cultural shock is always the weather, yeah? Because when you come from 4 seasons and you're so used to seeing the seasons change and the flowers change and the fruit change, and then you come to the equator where there's just one season all year round, that's a really big shock for me. Because it's like you don't even know what month it is sometimes. It could be January, it could be March, it could be August, it's all the same. When you go back to Europe, definitely the minute you see the winter you get the snow, and then in the summer and the spring you see the little snowdrops and the daffodils coming through. That was quite big because I think in terms of our energy, you sort of need those different seasons to understand changes in life, really. It's like winter you relax, but here we don't. We still carry on. Like in the UK, it's dark at 4 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah.
So you can't do anything. The shops are closed.
In winter, yeah.
Yeah, in winter it's dark at 4 o'clock. So everybody rests and relaxes. But you know, here it's light all the time. You can still work 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night all year round. So you don't tend to have those seasons of rest and relaxation where I think that was a big culture shock. But now I've sort of adapted and got used to it.
So for your coaching job, is it anything particular for Singaporeans? What they come with, like what problems, what challenges versus others?
A lot of Singaporeans come with stress because they were like me 20 years ago in the corporate world. It's even worse now because when I was in the corporate world, you know, there were no mobile phones, there was no social media. And now in the corporate world, it's like you're just distracted from every single angle.
Yeah.
So the level of stress is really, really high. Particularly Singaporeans who work for international companies because they do a job in Singapore, you know, and Singapore comes to a close at 5 o'clock and then the countries are waking up and they're still getting texts and WhatsApp messages and social media. So they really feel stretched and not enough time in the day to manage all of those things.
I know you work with, or like you deal with celebrities. Can you share like maybe any like memorable stories with celebrities or some like life lessons that you learn from them?
A lot of celebrities have had to go through really tough times to get to where they are today. Even when they were at their peak, you know, and they had all the wealth, they had thoughts of, this is not what I want. I'm not happy with this. I've lost my ability just to walk on the street and be normal, right? Because suddenly everybody wants a piece of them. They lose their freedom, and if they don't have a strong mind, that's when people, you know, the drugs come out and the parties come out and the suicidal thoughts come out. Everybody looks at celebrities and they think they've got this amazing life, but unless they have a strong mind, it's quite a challenging life. Because you have zero freedom. It's like we couldn't sit here today and talk like this. Everybody would be like taking photos and coming and touching you and wanting your autograph and, you know, doing all of these sorts of things. Now, the joy of Singapore is like the press here, they don't badger people. So I've had some of my celebrity friends, you know, clients come to Singapore and they love it because they can walk the street and nobody badgers them.
What about Feng Shui? I'm a bit skeptical about these things. Can you explain me why it's thing that is working? Because I know that Feng Shui is a big thing in Singapore, and Singapore is planned and was planned using Feng Shui's techniques.
Feng Shui literally means wind and water, and what it means is the energy of we call it qi. The energy moves down the mountain and it settles at the boundaries of water. So if you're in a country that has like hills or mountains and water, natural water, then already your Feng Shui is pretty good. So Singapore has that. But then what do? Is we find this great energy and we bring it into our own homes. So we have to find homes in good Feng Shui areas that will contain this energy. A lot of people don't quite realize one aspect which is quite important. The home contains the energy. So if you live in a landed property, like in a bungalow or a home on the ground, then that energy is contained in your house and it belongs to you. So if you live in an apartment block, it's a much bigger container of energy or qi, but then everybody in the apartment block shares that energy.
What's one little action that people can do after watching our interview today to change their life in a positive way?
Every morning when you wake up, first of all, you've got to think, I'm blessed to wake up. Because you know, right, we've seen in Russia, we've seen in Ukraine, so many thousands of people are not waking up anymore because of what has happened in those two countries, yeah? We take our life for granted. Every morning when we wake up, first thing we should say is thank you, I'm here. And then you've got to decide, you know, I cannot control the day. I don't know what the day will bring, but I do know what I can bring to the day. I can bring the best of myself to the day. If something doesn't go my way, fine, I'll manage that. I'll still bring the best of myself to the day. Because the moment you go in the downward spiral of moaning and complaining and everything else, you're just going to have a bad day yourself, right? You've just got to wake up in the morning, say thank you, I'm here, and I'm going to bring the best of myself. If it's raining and I didn't want it to rain, I'm still going to be happy. If I miss the taxi, I'm still going to be happy. You know, if my boss tells me off, I'm still going to be happy. I'm going to keep my happiness in my own hands because I'm going to bring the best of me to the day. And when you work in that energy, it's almost like amazing synchronistic moments happen and life pushes you forward.
Are you leaving? Wait, enjoy this video first. But it's gone in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.